So imagine being mad at men who you don't want, for being with women that want to be with them. There's a saying, go where you're celebrated, not tolerated, and that's what a lot of black men have done. Um, but imagine otherwise. Imagine a woman rejects you, and then you go find another woman, and then she runs you down just to say, "I didn't want you anyway because you're dusty." And then, as if that wasn't enough to add insult to injury, she says, and you're a loser for wanting to be with that other woman. I mean, my God, it's like these women feel as though men pursuing other relationships um, uh, because they don't want them, and because they find them undesirable, they find that unsettling. They're irritated by it. You know, they're irritated by the fact that other women are attracted to these men. And so, I mean, oh my God, right? How dare you decide to be happy with another woman? You know, you could be out here buying me groceries and taking care of my stepkids, your stepkids by Pookie and Ray Ray. But no, you decided to go out and live, right? Sarcasm, right? Keep that in mind. That's sarcasm. But that's basically what we're dealing with here, and I just find it very interesting. And it all came to fruition with these brothers, these athletes in this NFL draft. And most of them had, young white women with them. And a lot of African-American women found that distasteful. Really, they found it irritating. So the question is, what's the source of this? Because clearly logic is not involved. And so, I think there's probably some unresolved personal issues. She's definitely projecting insecurities, these women, these lovely ladies. They have obviously, in order to go that far with it, resort to going online talking bad about me. There's some unresolved feelings about black men. And this is why this is what causes them to be irrational and angry for these men, who they say are dusty and that they don't want. You see? Insecurity, low self-esteem, how as to their own unattractiveness or their self-worth. And, it's just something that you have to look at and ask yourself, what the hell is going on? They treat it as though it's rejection, even though they're the one that initially rejected these men. But the truth is, as far as black American women are concerned, when it comes to black men, they want to be able to reject you, but in no way are you supposed to be able to reject them, you see? And so now, when they see you with these white women and they see you with women of other ethnicities, they basically have to recognize that they've lost their right of first refusal. This is a legal term, actually, where if somebody is going to redistribute some property in the form of selling it or giving it away, you got to ask this person who has right of first refusal before. It's like the previous owner. You want to sell this property, you got to ask the right of first refusal of the previous owner before you do so, or whoever has the contract. And that denotes that there's some ownership interest, or somebody thinks they own you. Now, the truth is, fellas, they want you to run them down. See, they want you to be running them down and chasing them down, which validates their egos, but then they turn around and reject you. So it's a fool's errand. And so most men with common sense don't do it, especially black men. That's why 51% of black men aren't married and don't have kids, right? And now they're angry because they're losing that right to tell you no, that right of first refusal, that right to reject you. You see, the friend zone is dead for any man with common sense. Passport bros killed that. The friend zone is no more. See, those men who have been rejected for years and decades, now they've gotten their passports and they're moving on. But the question again is, why is it that these women feel this way? How dare they act agitated at the fact that men who they don't want are now going to get with women who actually want them? And so we have to also look at some of their past relationships and their unfulfilled desires. You know, she's actually projecting these women are projecting their resentment on you, their frustration. You see, these men who can't fulfill their needs, not because they can't physically, it's because she doesn't want them to, right? She wants Pookie and Ray Ray to fulfill her needs until he can, right? But other than that, there's just some of them that just don't want to see black men being productive. They don't want you happy. They don't want you happy without them. You see? They don't want that. They want you as miserable as they are in this regard. You see, and that's a problem. And this just hate for all men, hate for all black men. Men they've never even met before. Because they're mad at previous experiences. You know, productive black men can't be happy because black women aren't happy. That's what you see, and it's not all, but it's enough. There's enough comments on the internet about what transpired for us to gauge that it's a significant cohort of black American women who feel this way. You see? But the thing is, you know, and when you kind of read some of the comments, some of the things they say is this is like peeling a scab. I believe it said peeling a scab off a wound so it can't heal. And that aligns with the concept of emotional damage. And the emotional damage oftentimes comes from previous relationships, or they're carrying negative emotions from past feelings. You know, now she has generalized feelings towards black men. And the odd thing is, it might not even be her own feelings. This might be conversations that she's had with her friends and relatives and such, you know? And then of course there's always the elephant in the room, the idea of competition, you know, the idea of comparison. You have black American women who've been socially conditioned, right, to compare themselves with others. I think all women do that. And so when they see another woman, you know, taking something that they believe belongs to them, then now you're looking at irritation, you know, the competitive feelings. They're feeling competitive, and now that leads to irritating feelings. And this is for somebody that they don't even want. Imagine that. And that in itself lets you know this is ego. You know, she still desires to be the fairest of them all, right, as far as black women are concerned. But now they have to see these younger women, these whiter women with straighter hair, competing with them and taking what they feel belongs to them away. And then of course there's the social expectations, and this is something that's complicated, but it's easy to understand. So in black female society, you know, there are norms that have imposed. Somebody typed Dusty in the chat room. These norms and expectations of the lovely ladies, as I call them, about relationships and what they should look like. Of course, you want a black man who is 6 feet tall, making 6 or 7 figures, and you know, with a body that's out of this world. And so that's their social, and who's gonna give you money and take care of your kids and all your other issues, right? Who's gonna take you to expensive dinners and lunches and breakfast. He's gotta be a thug and a educated dude. And so these are some of the unreal expectations. So when they see this white woman pick up this dusty black man who they deem is worthy of nothing but rejection, that upsets their personal expectations. And it creates something called cognitive dissonance, you see? And cognitive dissonance means there's a contradiction in their mind. it's no different than basically they see this white woman take this dusty black man and win in life, and it forces them to have to reevaluate what they deem valuable and what they deem is not valuable. Very similar to the kid who has a toy and he kicks the toy in a corner, and then when some other kid wants it, then he wants to come fight that kid about it or cry and scream because now somebody else sees value in it. It's very similar. It's the kid who spit on the box of cookies or the cookies in the box, and now that somebody else has come along and said, well, I'll eat those cookies. Now they don't want to share. Now they don't want anybody to have it. So this is what you're dealing with. But for the most part, when we're addressing cognitive dissonance, you're dealing with women who are experiencing feelings of rejection, right? From men that they rejected initially, which doesn't make any sense. How can you be upset with somebody you rejected for going on? You see? That makes no sense. But again, because of social expectations, it challenges her belief about her decision. It makes her look at her decision as though she made poor judgment. You see? And the big problem is they don't want to compete. So now you've lost something that you now recognize as valuable, but you still don't feel like you should compete for it. So what does that do? It leaves you irritated because you're conflicted, right? You see? And the other thing is, because of their social programming and the sisterhood tells them that black men are dusty and undeserving. They've done everything they could to talk bad about us. They call us lowlifes, bullet bags. There's a movement online that says that they should abort or unalive unborn black baby boys. They've told the world that we're deadbeat dads, we're violent, and yet and still, there's still some woman out there who sees value as a woman who society deems has more value than her. I.e., that white woman has a higher sexual marketplace value. That Latina woman has a higher sexual marketplace value. If you don't believe me, go ask women why they wear hair that doesn't look like the hair that naturally grows out of their head. Why then would they wear the hair of women who don't look like them? You see? Yeah, I know. White women do it too, but you don't see white women and Latina women walking around with afro wigs, do you? You see them walking around with extensions for their own hair. And so what that lets you know is those characteristics are deemed more attractive in the sexual marketplace. But nevertheless, the black woman sees her as more valuable, and it demonstrates to her that this man has been chosen by a woman who has a higher sexual marketplace value than I do in my own mind, you know, especially since the women are thin and fit. And so it makes them still feel as though they have poor judgment, but they still don't want to compete. And they can't see how other women, especially women with higher sexual marketplace value, will choose these dusty men because it goes against their black female social expectations and what they've been taught. Now, on the flip side, fellas, and let's just keep it 100, your choices as a black man, you got a group of people who may or may not have racist beliefs about you. But on the other hand, dealing with black women, you got women who want to treat you like their property, like you're their property or children. You see? Now the thing is, it burns women up because there's a financial aspect involved in this too. These athletes specifically, and I'm talking about the NFL draft and any other pro ball draft that we're talking about, it really upsets black women when they see men that have value, i.e. money, that don't value them. You see, they value these men with money, but those men don't value them. Now, the thing is, they complain about these dusties, right? These dusty men not having money. But then they don't want Becky and Marcella or Armani to fall in love with it. You see? Especially if she herself could be using you financially. And that just lets you know the mentality of these women. I've said it for many years that we live in a nation of 304s. Now you can insert a word that rhymes with go or pro, but we live in a nation of 304s, and they see things in a transactional manner. And this is a lot of women that move this way. You see, they don't see any other value for you other than what you can put in their pocket or their bank accounts or the things that you can purchase for them. Now, when you deal with these so-called pro-blacks and you really listen to them, they go even further. They'll take a situation like Kobe Bryant and Vanessa Bryant and tell you that they're angry at Kobe Bryant because he married this non-African American woman who gave birth to his children, and that she's receiving his wealth. And that lets you know it's not about you as an individual. It's not about unity. You see, this is purely capitalistic in the way it breaks down. They could care less about you as an individual black man. They could care less about you and your happiness or your peace of mind. They only want your resources, which reaffirms the notion that they see you as nothing more than a disposable utility. You see? Now, the crazy thing is, there was a time when these sort of outbursts and anger was reserved for athletes. But now you have a situation where you have the passport bros who've interjected themselves into the social system, the social scene. Even if you don't have a lot of money, even if you're a regular guy with a regular job, the fact that you're now rejecting them, right? It bothers them to the point that they have to try to pretend, oh, those men don't have any money. That's why initially when the passport bros hit the social scene, a lot of women would try to call them broke and dusty, and it took the so-called foreign women, especially the women from Thailand and the Philippines, to say, no, broke men can't afford to travel. Broke men can't afford these $2,000 tickets. No. So they had to fall back off of that because they were forced to recognize that traveling and living overseas is expensive. But again, even if we go further down the food chain, we talked about pro athletes, we talked about the passport bros, oftentimes who are regular guys. Keep in mind, 60% of black men have reached the middle class, so by the time they hit middle age, and for the most part, that's the bulk of the passport bros. And so these are not poor men by any means. But even when you want to talk about brothers who are financially challenged, brothers who are even physically undesirable, black American women are even bothered by them because there's a lot of chunky passport bros, right? Even straight up poor brothers. There was a young man, his name was Stephen Clark. He was killed in his backyard by the police in Sacramento a few years ago. He would be classified as a poor pookie, you see? The lovely ladies were updated with him because of some tweets that had come out where he had made some remarks about black women, and they were so upset with him, they decided that we're not going to get behind the proper investigation of his death because his girlfriend or baby mama, child's mother, was of another ethnicity, and he had made those tweets. That lets you know they're even mad at poor Pookie, even when poor Pookie gets another woman. So if they can't have the rich men, black men, that feels like rejection. The passport bros, who may be a little overweight, a little heavy around the hips and the belly, they're mad at them, and they're mad at the financially challenged brothers. So it's just all of it. So it's not just one group of men. It's all black men because they thrive on that attention. But more importantly, there's a sense of possessiveness and entitlement that black women have towards black men. They truly think that they own black men. There's a sense of ownership or control that they feel they have, you see, towards black men. They feel that they have a right to control or influence our actions. And this is no different than the slave master. They believe they own black men. They believe black men were their property. And unfortunately, there have been generations after generations of black men who never checked black women for trying to play us like that. You see? We've never done that. That's why it's important. What I do, I preach a freedom doctrine. You are free men. You see? You're a free man to do what you want to do. The world belongs to you. The world is yours. Go see it. Now, this might, you know, this might upset people. You see? And a lot of this reason that these women are upset also is because, again, we have to go back to the expectations. There are a lot of simps out there who have told black women that they are queens, and these simps have brainwashed them and told them that they're the most desirable men or women in the world. And then reality hit, because these same simps are now either not talking to them, not marrying them, not dating them, or hopped on an airplane and went somewhere else. A few months ago, I saw Dr. Umar Johnson, and apparently he had gone to the Dominican Republic, and he had changed his tune and said, the Dominican women are black. Doctor 3 times, because he said everything 3 times. So basically, they have unrealistic expectations, and these men are not behaving according to those unreal expectations, and it agitates them. You see? The other thing, of course, is obvious. Black women have developed a deep emotional attachment to black men, and that makes sense because we come from the same culture, we're the same people. And along with that attachment comes a sense of ownership, right? To the point that they feel entitled to our time, attention, and resources. You see? It's not returned to us in the inverse. We are not entitled to them, but they're entitled to us. Very possessory in the way it transpires in the social scene. But nevertheless, when black women see black men with other women, what it does is they recognize the loss of control that they have, specifically the loss of control of that man, his time, his intention, and his resources. Especially when we're talking about these men going to another group. And when that other group happens to be the competition, i.e. that white woman who the black woman sees as her mortal enemy, apparently, it bothers them. You see? Jealousy is triggered. They're triggered. Loss of control. You see? And again, they don't want to compete. So they're driven by a sense of competition and jealousy, but because they don't want to compete and they feel that we're unworthy of competing over, because remember, we're dusty, it's just agitated. It leaves them paralyzed and angry, so they only can lash out and say irrational things. You see? And that's what you're dealing with, generally speaking. And here's the other thing. When they see a man who might have been a dusty college student all of a sudden get drafted into the NFL, and now he's an instant millionaire. Remember, these sort of men are used to validate women. And so now you got this ball player, and this white woman who is sitting next to him is instantly validated. Her value increases tenfold along with his, because as you lay down with a woman, she inherits a large percentage of your status, which is why a king can make a queen, but a queen can only make a consort. It's just something to think about. And of course, there's always the fact that these women are unconsciously attracted to you, irrespective of what they say. The thing is, they don't really want a good man until after they've been ran through by a bunch of thugs. They don't want a good man until they've tried all sorts of sexual lifestyles, including rainbowism. And they don't want you until they have little to no options left. And what that does is, when you decide to go off somewhere else, that's somebody they actually be attracted to. So anyway, fellas, this is not your issue to deal with. This is a situation that black women are going to have to deal with and reconcile. The cognitive dissonance is one thing, but you are not responsible for trying to make somebody happy or trying to satisfy someone who rejected you. It makes no sense. And I will be amiss if I didn't tell you that if black women had the options that black men had, they would have been gone. But because they do not, because there aren't a large contingent of men who are willing to fly to the United States and date and marry and wife or even pay attention to black American women, they're stuck. Now they might try to throw misdirection and tell you that all these men want them, but they don't. And the proof is in the pudding. Black men are married at a higher rate than black women. We know that black women have more children out of wedlock than black men, which means that black American women are doing the same thing in other communities that they're doing here. When they do get with a man of another race, they will let him get them pregnant. And we have 1.5 million black children out of 8 million to prove that fact. But that's just the same old habit. At the end of the day, fellas, you have to go where you are celebrated, not where you're tolerated. You know, and the idea that women who would reject you are now upset because you found someone who will accept you, it's just ridiculous. And you fellas, you know, you owe it to yourself to be with someone who is going to be cooperative with you. Again, and I'll say this again, fellas, I always tell you, my preference, and I can only give you my preference is that you date and marry women of African descent. It would be irresponsible for me to get on here and say anything other than that. Now, when I say African descent, that does not necessarily just mean foundational black American. You can marry Afro-Caribbean, women from the African continent. You can marry women who are of Afro-Latina, whatever. You see, I'm supposed to say that. But I'm also supposed to tell you that if you cannot find a woman who is of African descent, you would be a foolish man to pass up a good woman who loves you, who treats you with respect, who will bear your children, who's supportive, who's cooperative, whatever ethnicity she is, whatever race she is. You'll be a foolish man to pass that woman up also. So don't be that fool.